brief overview of what we went over?
Yeah, what's this chapter about?
Like
Pretty much.
workplace environment.
Okay, the workplace environment, but in a specific focus.
Equality and wages.
Equality and diversity. Okay? And ways that we can create safe and welcoming work environments, right? So the title of the chapter was, what do employers owe employees, right? And so we were looking at all the different kinds of things that from an ethical perspective, what ethical obligations and what legal obligations do employers have to the people that work for them? How do we balance that contract of work and compensation? Okay, what am I supposed to be able to expect in terms of effort and productivity from an employee? And what should employees be able to expect from their employers? Okay, that's why we get into things like OSHA. That's why we got into things like diversity and representation in the workplace. That's why we got into things like insurance and all these other kinds of things, because these are all critically important things that have been tied to business. And so then as employers, we have to have a clear understanding of what that ethical expectation is, right? Because we can see times where companies have failed to live up even to the ethical, even to the legal standard. But then we also saw examples throughout this chapter of companies that exceeded even the ethical maximum, right? Remember when we read about Google?
I was like, what?
I'm going to pay you 50% of your salary for the next decade. I'm going to give you an immediate investment in all of your shares, and I'm going to be paying you monthly for your kids until they're like, what was it, 18 and 23? Yeah, it was some insane thing. Okay.
I was like, oh, I work for Google.
I like what Dan Feinstein did
Which was?
when he realized that his employers, what they were making, they weren't living very well. And it was brought to his attention. He was almost embarrassed, like, oh my gosh, I never really thought about all that. And then he lowered his wages.
And increased everybody so that everybody was making 70,000 across the board.
That was so cool
That was
too.
awesome. And then in the long run, his whole business was even more successful.
Yeah, so much more productive.
Okay. All right, so let's take a look at, so this is why we're talking about this, okay? So we want to provide some context for why are we talking about this in the first place. All right, so for today, let me open this. Actually, let me do this. There we go. I'm going to have to open it in the. I did not mark any extra credit for this for the last 2 weeks. It's not that they haven't been good comments, but I feel like now that we're really kind of into the semester and people are a little bit more comfortable, I'm going to be probably upping the game a little bit. I've been pretty generous the first couple of weeks, so everybody's had a little bit, but I'm probably going to be upping the game just a little bit. All right, so I believe, Winter, I think you're up first.
Yes. I'm gonna go real simple and go with number one.
Okay, go for it.
I don't remember what this, okay, which of the following laws mandates advance notice of mass layoffs to workers so they can adequately prepare for such an event? The answer is B, one.
Warren. Okay, so why do you think that this became law?
Because just like having a mass layoff or like closure in a company that like you knew about, and like So businesses would like have people continue to work and like not tell them because they were worried that they would go try to find a different job or just like leave before the closing.
Mm-hmm.
And that became a problem because when you tell someone that they're gonna lose their whole like job that they've been like working for so long, like if you tell them that like 2 days before you're like closing the company or like even a week, like that's not very much time for them to try to figure out how to deal with things financially. And so a lot of people really suffer from that.
Okay, excellent. So that's a great reason, okay? Any other ideas? Why else would this become law? Why can't this just be, why did we need warn instead of just an ethical expectation that employers would express?
And the text talked about how little companies did that. I think it was like 27% or something. So 1 in 5 companies actually told their employees they won't have a job. And because of that, this had to become a law. This had to become the minimum.
Okay, because there are repercussions when I let people know ahead of time about a pretty significant business action like closing or relocating. And it can really damage or devastate the business, especially if competitors know about this. Like Winter brought up, if people immediately start, okay, well, I'm out of here, I'm gonna find another job, the likelihood of being able to stay open as long as they had originally planned becomes very, very difficult. Okay. Now, we had talked about this from the perspective of the worker, right? For example, Winter mentions this idea, as soon as I find out my job's about to go, I'm immediately going to be looking for new employment. But it's not just the workers that get affected. How else can this concept affect? Catel's going, I want to answer this, but I'm going to wait until he finishes talking. What do you got?
Well, so many businesses were not behaving that.
Okay.
It was a problem.
Well, a classic example, and somebody brought this up, the idea when Ruby Tuesday was here. They closed or announced their closure by putting up a sign in the door. From one night to the next morning, they closed. Black Bear Diner was pretty close to the same thing, the one out in Chubbuck, right? It was one of these things that, look, we realized that we had enough money that if we closed today, we would be able to honor our payroll, but if we stayed open even for another 2 or 3 days, we would not be able to pay what we owed our employees. So they had to close immediately, which is unfortunate, but that's not necessarily the focus of a thing like WARN. WARN is about massive industries that close. So I think, Haley, were you the one that brought up FMC?
Yes, that was me.
Okay, because I came here the year after FMC closed. And I remember because my classes were filled, not with recent high school graduates, but entire classes of nothing but people in their late 40s, early 50s, who had been working for 20 to 30 years with a high school diploma, and now all of a sudden realized they were going to have to get an associate's degree or something just to try to make the same kind of money that they were making at FMC. The fear in my classrooms was palpable. You could cut the tension with a knife. Well, but think about this. You're in your mid-50s. You have a complete lifestyle. You have a mortgage. You have car payments. You have all of these other things. You've got kids that are reaching college age, and all of a sudden, everything you had planned has now been stripped. Now, on top of that, if you think about, for example, in Michigan, when large auto workers would close plants, it didn't just affect the workers, entire towns and communities had been built up around these industries, right? And so when a major business closes, you're losing taxes, which pay for all of the services that are available. There is a reason that Warren exists, because massive shifts in employment can have incredibly devastating impacts. And sadly, like we said, unfortunately, simply relying on an ethical minimum wasn't seeming to be enough. We had to go into the form of legal, what is the basement, what is the bottom floor of behavior that we need to expect. Small businesses normally don't warrant Warren level registration. I think that there's probably a minimum number of individuals that are employed in order for this to be triggered. Okay? Yeah, I think so. For example, I remember when Ballard Medical Testing Equipment, where the Eames complex is, that used to be a medical supply company that developed medical equipment. When it went out of when it transferred and relocated to Mexico, it was like a 3 or 4 month. They announced it was closing, and then for the next 3 to 4 months, they went through, we're going to develop severance packages. We're going to create employment relocation and training options. We're going to put all this money into retraining our workers so they can find other jobs. And we saw another bump in enrollment because of that, with all those Ballard folks coming in. Okay, so this kind of thing does happen. It happens here. Okay, not a lot, but it does. Sam, were you going to say something?
Yeah, what happens with Warren during something like COVID? A lot of businesses did not expect to go under, but did.
Again, I think that the number of people involved would be one of the situations about whether or not that gets triggered or not. But I have a feeling that if larger companies close and stuff like that, they tend to be required to inform their employees and provide packages and processes. For example, you see for things like Kmart closing, right? They're declaring bankruptcy. They're going to have to provide pathways for their employees to relocate to new employment. Okay. All right. Thank you, Winner. Let's see, Billy, you're up next.
Can I do question 5?
Question number 5. Yes, you can.
Okay, so if you feel harassed, prejudiced against, or disadvantaged in your workplace, you may file a complaint with the, I think it's Equal Employment Opportunity Commissions.
Yes. Okay. All right. So the entire idea is this is the most common place to be able to file a grievance. Okay. Excellent. I'm just going to call that one good. Okay. Jackson, you're up. Jackson going once. Jackson going twice. Okay.
Hey, Mr. Lambert.
Yeah.
What question did Winter answer?
She answered question number 1.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Josh.
Can I answer number 25?
You can.
True or false? OSHA does not have the authority to levy criminal fines against companies that commit serious violations. That is true. They don't. They can only authorize. They only have the authority to levy significant fines.
Okay. Why is that word criminal so important? So they can levy fines, but they can't levy criminal fines. What's the difference?
I'm gonna need a moment to think about that.
Okay.
Has to do with the court system, right?
Basic. Okay.
Well, yeah, it's that, and then it's also like the criminal fine gets put on your record. And so there's like a huge difference between just like a financial fine and like a criminal fine that shows up on your record.
Okay, and here's another reason. Crimes can only be committed by who? Individuals. Can companies commit crimes? Again, see what this is how this gets back to this question of a company cannot make decisions, people make decisions. Because OSHA cannot assign criminal fines because they can't unless they are, because OSHA is simply focused on business, unless there was a criminal act that resulted in something happening, meaning it was intentional or something like that. You know, I accidentally dropped a ton of bricks on my coworker, right? Okay, I can look to see if an individual is guilty of crimes, but OSHA is simply looking at violations of statutes. Fines can be levied against companies, crimes cannot. That's the big difference. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Josh. Okay, Andrew, you're up.
I will do number 7.
Number 7. Okay.
So which concept holds that workers should be paid on the basis of the value of the job to the organization? And that's their comparable worth.
Okay. What does this mean? What does this idea of comparable worth mean?
I would say it all comes down to money. If the worth that they're providing to their company has to be worth the salary that they're being paid.
Okay. This is why professional sports can pay individuals the way they do. It is this argument right here. Why am I paying somebody $150 million over 5 years to throw a ball? It's because in the field where they work, that ability to throw the ball the way they do is of such intrinsic worth to the product that they sell, meaning I play sports that people like to watch and are willing to pay to watch it, that I can justify paying that money. Okay? It's why I do not have to pay other people the same salary that I would pay a professional athlete.
Yeah, Conor McGregor, the UFC fighter, talks about this quite a bit of why he takes so much more now than when he first started, and about how he actually does draw attention to make the show bigger because they pay him more.
Exactly, and they pay him more because he has brought additional attention and money to the company, right? This is why, for example, professional wrestlers tend to be so flamboyant, because it's the only way they get people to watch, to purchase merchandise, and to do the other things that keep that particular business working. Okay, so this idea of comparable worth makes the argument I do not have to pay every single person in my company the exact same wage. So, for example, my background is in English. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in English. Guess how common bachelor's and master's degrees in English are? They're very common, okay? Lots of people get it. Having done that, I realize now it would have been much wiser for me to go and get a degree in machining or welding, because it's a more unique field. Therefore, when I applied to teach here, the pay that I get as a master's degree in English is less than the individuals that I hire to teach in cosmetology. They get paid significantly more. I have a master's degree, they have an associate's degree. How can they possibly make more money than I do? Because of comparable work. There are so many, I mean, this is basic economics, right? I have a common skill, therefore it's easy to find other people that can do the same job. Therefore, that decreases the demand, therefore my pay decreases. When I get, for example, if I hire somebody in the health occupations field, that pay significantly increases because it's harder to find them. Especially when they say, I can make more money in the field than I can do teaching, therefore I have to pay high enough to lure them away. It's the entire concept. Okay? It's a sad but true fact that I used to start my classes by saying, for example, I used to have a lot of diesel technology students. And not to diminish the diesel technology, but almost to a person, they hate taking my classes. Because I'm a diesel mechanic, I don't need to know how to write. I'm here to fix engines. And I would say your best revenge, if you have to take my class and if you can survive my class, your best revenge, bring in your first paycheck. Because your first paycheck will always trump mine. And I actually had some students that did that.
That's hilarious.
It's sad, but it's true. All right, Logan. Logan going once. Logan going twice. Well, to give you an idea, we're about to start, we're looking at creating a degree in a certificate for Amazon Web Services in our business technology program. We're just kind of investigating right now. The average salary for an Amazon web technician is $135,000. Why in the heck would I waste my time getting a PhD when I could go through a four-credit certification course? Now that's nationwide. You can't guarantee that that's how much you get paid here. But the truth is, you can work here for a company anywhere in the country because it's a cloud-based technology.
Yeah.
So.
You also keep doing a little more education into another field and then do something else.
Yeah, but I'm kind of committed to this and I enjoy doing this so much that I make enough to be able to pay my mortgage and take care of my kids, and I can sleep every night. I have achieved what we call ethical zen. I can sleep with all of my decisions, right? And that's my hope for you guys, is that you find careers where you will be able to find ethical zen and sleep every night. All right. Okay, I'm going to assume that Logan's not here. So Jack, are you here?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Go.
I'll answer number 16.
Number 16.
Yeah, it says, which of the following benefits is typically valued more highly by men than by women? And according to the graphic shown in the reading, and this is something I don't understand, but it was D, a free gym membership was more important.
Well, we like to get stuff that we don't necessarily use. So free gym, okay. Why would we, what relevance does this question have to what we're reading? How does this have to do with business ethics, Jack? You are 100% correct, by the way, but how does this connect?
Yeah, well, so I think it was basically just talking about how, well, let's see. I mean, maybe it's just because since women who are entering the workforce, I mean, a lot of these other things are going to be much more important to them because maybe it's, well, geez, I don't know, man. I got to think about it.
Okay. Does anybody want to help them out? Hold on. Haley, you're up.
Didn't it have to do with just the different preferences and the different priorities that people put over other things, like men and women in different age groups? They all have different priorities when it comes to the options that they get at work. So that's why it's so hard for employers to offer these, because if you have a large age group of people, or you have a mixture of both male and female, you're not going to make everybody happy because one group is going to want this, but another group is going to want something else.
That's exactly it, because my goal is I'm trying to create a workplace environment that people want to work in, because if they want to work here, first of all, they'll be more productive when they are here, and they're more likely to stick around. The longer they stick around, the higher the rate of return on investment occurs. The more value the employer gets for that employee being there. Okay, and so one of the tricky parts, and this is exactly, you hit it right there on the head, Haley. When I try to offer these amenities, which is above and beyond just compensation, I have to try to figure out the demographics. So for example, one of the big perks for me working at ISU is that my kids can go to ISU for half price. So even if I didn't like working here, the opportunity to offer my kids 50% off of college tuition is a huge, compelling argument. But that's only compelling if, what?
You have kids.
If I have kids, and if they want to go to college, and if they want to go to college here. If any one of those three doesn't occur, that benefit has zero value to me. And it becomes very problematic to figure out, especially like the book was saying, age differences are going to change the kinds of things that the benefits that we're most interested in. Or gender is probably going to affect the kinds of benefits that we're interested in. And I, as a business manager, would have to figure out and how to negotiate which benefits are most affordable to me, but that have meaning and value to the people that work for me. And that's a challenge. Okay, excellent. Okay. Yeah.
My name's not on the list of
I
students.
know, I was going to get to you though. I wasn't going to forget you. I know. It's always fun for me to figure out where I'm going to put Caden in my list every time. Because I created this right before you enrolled in the class, and so I just copied and pasted it all the way through the course. And so every single day I wake up and say, okay, where am I going to put Caden today?
It makes sense to just always put them last, I think.
That's not a very good idea.
That's what he gets for entering late.
Well, but he wasn't late. He was
Later
That
than-
wouldn't be very ethical, Mr. Lambert.
Oh my goodness.
You know, just for that, Caden, you're up next.
Okay. Can I do number 15?
Only if that wasn't going to be the one that Zach was going to pick.
No, you're good.
Okay, so you're good. You're totally good, Caden.
All
All right, what do you got?
It says in the United States, the pay of a person with a high status in the workplace, such as a CEO, is on average, and I said A, 300 times higher than the pay of an average worker at the same company.
Okay. So let us ask again. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
I think this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with comparable. What was it called? Hold on, let me find it. Comparable worth.
Yes.
Just because high status employees are essential to like the functioning of the company, so the employees are willing to pay competitive wages so they don't lose those employees.
Okay. But that begs the question of how much real value does the CEO bring to the company versus the people that are on the front line? For example, at Starbucks, is the CEO as valuable? I mean, right before class began, the people that were here in the classroom were talking about tipping at a restaurant, right? And the fact that if you get good service, you tend to have a much higher tip because you want to come back to that place because of how you're treated. I am not treated that way by a CEO. I have never, actually, that's not true. The company that we are using, Perusal, is still pretty much in its startup phase. When I first started using this product in my classes, I would send emails asking questions about it. I would get an email within a half an hour from the CEO because it was still small enough that the CEO was still doing this. But guess what that did to me as a user? Guaranteed that I was going to keep using that product when the CEO themselves are contacting me and helping me to figure out the questions that I have. I never forgot, I actually had a question on a Sunday night, the day before the semester began. He answered me on Sunday night. I emailed him at 8 and he answered me by 8:30.
Wow.
That guy made me a user for life. Hopefully you guys are finding value in Perusal yourselves, because as a teacher, I'm committed because of how that person treated me. But getting back to the point that we're making, a CEO is making 300 times the salary of the people that are working for them. Yes?
Something like Tesla or Sky or whatever.
Mhm.
Elon Musk has made that company far more than 300 times the normal, or 300% of a normal employee.
Yep.
A good CEO will multiply that company's wealth significantly.
Excellent. And that's the argument of comparable work, right? If that owner or CEO or whoever, right, that high status employee, football players, basketball players, baseball players, if their performance is such that that's what's driving the product, that's what comparable worth is arguing. Okay, excellent. And it's trying to find that line between CEOs that are making incredibly high value and frontline workers that are not. Okay, for example, I will have to look this up. I apologize because I don't have the status or the statistic in front of me. But I want to say it's around 30% of individuals that work at Walmart require public assistance because the salary that they earn is still below the poverty line.
I could say I worked at Walmart, okay, I got paid $10 an hour, same as everybody else for that same exact job. And after a year, you get like $1 raise or except raise or whatever. So that was standard for the work, and they had to increase that, or they chose to increase that. So compared to the minimum wage, significantly higher.
Right.
But some places you got that overtime, sometimes you get, like I usually got 8 hours of overtime. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but $15 an hour, 8 hours.
It adds up, yeah. But it does beg the question that at $10 an hour, you're still $3 above the minimum wage.
Sure.
Right? And what we're saying with the argument of the minimum wage is this is the legal minimum that you can pay somebody in the United States. That is, that your time must be worth at least a minimum of $7.25 an hour for whatever work you're doing. Can I pay more than that? Absolutely. Okay, but the minimum is this. But it begs the question of, how do I balance the value of what the CEO brings versus the value of these other folks?
Yes, I think it just comes back to your skill. Like when you're fresh 16, 15-year-old worker working at mid-B's for $7.25, that's fair. But by the time you're 20, you should have some skill that lets you go into the market and make more money. By the time you're 25, you should have more skill that allows you to make more money. That's the idea. It's not we're trying to keep people down. It's just by X amount of time, you should have X amount of skill.
We hope, but and so then we should be looking at, if that's not the case, what is going on? Why isn't that happening? Okay. But anyway, yeah, this is where we get into those tricky questions of compensation.
I was kind of thinking that too, because you'd think that like the frontline workers would be really like essential also, but does it just come down to like degrees, certifications, and experience for those high value employees or high status employees? Or
not necessarily. I mean, I'm a PhD and I do not make half as much as my two brother-in-laws who both have associate's degrees, but that's because of the fields they're in. Yes.
It also depends on like how, like you said earlier, how replaceable you are in the job. So like frontline workers oftentimes are a lot easier to replace than people higher up.
Especially in minimum wage jobs, because those minimum wage jobs tend to be standardized, right? So bringing up what Sam was talking about with this idea of working in Mickey D's. When I work at Mickey D's, I'm going to be doing a very specific job with very specific tasks that tend to be designed so that we can constantly replace that position without disrupting the flow of work. Managers, on the other hand, require a level of experience, expertise, and knowledge in the field. Okay, you don't just replace managers on a regular basis. Okay, it's not designed to be swapped out like a gear or something like that. Okay, and as we go up, when we hit somebody like Elon Musk, the nature of his skills, his understanding, Steve Jobs, is not somebody you can replace, period. Right? The Apple that we know today, okay, in the late 1990s was almost non-existent. The company was almost dead. Nobody was buying those products. Okay, they were basically limping along on educational contracts with schools, and that was about all that was keeping them open. They had kicked Steve Jobs out. He was gone from the company, and they realized we aren't going to survive. So they bring him back, and then all of a sudden in 2007, he releases something, the iPhone. And it completely changes the face of technology, right? Then we have the iPad, and then all of a sudden this idea of mobile computing becomes a reality that had never been possible before. You can't replace that person. You can't just go and say the next person to apply, hey, we're going to put you in as CEO. I don't necessarily believe that it's solely based on certificates and education, but I think that a lot of times education and certificates give you, like Stan was saying, irreplaceable skills or experience or insight that allow you to function in ways that other people cannot. Yeah. And I remember the first iPhone compared to what it is now. Wow. I mean, I still remember walking around with my iPod thinking I was pretty cool. All right, Zach, you're up.
All right, I'll go with number 6.
Okay.
It says, what is the difference between nominal wage and real wage? I went with letter D, as in dog.
Okay.
Nominal wage represents the actual amount of money a worker earns per hour, and real wage represents the nominal wage adjusted for inflation. That's what I chose.
All right, what does that mean, though? Let's translate this into layman's terms, layperson's terms.
Like, real wages seems to be determined by like inflation rates, like considering purchasing power of some sort of compensation amount or something.
Okay, but what you're exactly right, but what does that mean?
I really don't know how to like bring it back down to
Okay. Nominal, so the nominal wage represents what's printed on the check. Okay, that's how much you are actually paid. The real wage is based on what can I actually do with the amount that's printed on that check. Okay, so for example, a friend of mine was talking about how if he was living in California, he was offered a position at a junior college and he would be making $100,000 a year. Okay, that would be what? His nominal or real wage? His nominal wage. What's the problem with that check of $100,000 in California? Okay, $100,000 is not worth as much, technically speaking, in California as it would be if I was making $100,000 here in Pocatello. I'd be living pretty darn good. Sorry for the little squeak there. Okay, I'd be living pretty good. The cost of living is great. Cost of goods and services is pretty low here, right? So we can live with a lower nominal wage here because the real wage is much higher in Idaho than it would be if I was living in New York.
I think California's bad if you live in Alaska.
Or Hawaii.
$10 a gallon.
Uh-huh.
Like, by the time you eat, a Game Boy's like $60 and you're like, no, I've never saved enough for that. Because, you know, rice is probably $3 a pound for rice.
Mm-hmm.
Vegetables, good luck. Like, you eat them that day, otherwise they're bad.
Yeah, because it took so long to get there in the first place. But yeah, so that's what this entire idea of nominal versus real wages is. What can I actually do with that? The house that I live in, right, I bought for $125,000. If I was to take that same house in California, I'd be looking at least at 400 to 500,000. It's a tiny house. It's perfect for me, but it would be way out of my price range until I realize what my salary would be there to make that comparable. Okay? All right.
Mr. Lambert, I have a question.
Okay, I might have an answer. Let's see if they match.
So, in Idaho, our price of living isn't very high. Like it's pretty low, like what we were just talking about. How come
Yep.
in other areas the price of living there is so much higher? Like in DC, the price of living there is so high. Or like how you guys were just talking about California. I don't understand why there's such a wide gap.
I would probably say a couple of things. Number one, population. That's the biggest thing. When I have a higher population, goods and services are more expensive to acquire. I mean, for example, if you think about the amount of food and services that have to go into Los Angeles to feed everybody, that's an incredible amount of resources that are going into one location. So it's going to be more expensive, but because there are more people to serve, I can charge more or get more, so I can pay more. Right? So for example, Pocatello is not a large town. There's a lot of not free, but available land around here. So house prices aren't as high. Land prices aren't as high. But if you look in Pocatello, the housing market in Pocatello is going way up. Why?
Everybody wants to move here.
Because people are moving. Okay, what's that? Sorry, I cut somebody off. Because it's not California.
People from California are coming in.
Exactly. Well, okay, so a classic example. Last year, the FBI built a massive expansion to their headquarters here in Pocatello, the Data Analysis Center. They hired 400 new positions. The majority of those positions were filled from people that were relocating from other FBI locations around the country coming here. Now, most of those folks were coming from places where they were accustomed to paying $200,000 to $300,000 to $400,000 for a home that would be an hour or two commute from where they worked. The idea of being able to live where your commute was a maximum of 5 minutes, and that's on a bad traffic day, right, was insane. And when they're bringing $200,000 to $300,000 to $400,000 in hand, all of a sudden, the only homes they're looking at are homes in Satterfield, because those are the homes that they would never be able to buy a home like that in Washington, D.C. or California. So they're more than happy to pay that price. That drives up all prices. And now all of a sudden, you've got folks that don't have that kind of money going, how in the heck did I miss this? I can't afford to buy a home in Pocatello anymore.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, homes and income are going up in price. McCannon is going up, because these are folks that are saying, if I have to drive an hour, look at where I can live. I can go and live on Buckskin and have a house that I could never dream of in California. I can afford that with change to spare, right?
And now you also have taxes going up, so.
Now I have taxes going
I
up.
can't afford your home anymore because I had, like, for example, my dad's property, about 200,000.
Mhm.
It shot up $30,000 worth of value this last year.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're not paying taxes on $200,000 property, you're paying taxes on $230,000. And so-
Even though the property itself has not changed, it's the value of everything around. Does that help Anthony at all?
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna have to kick this up a little bit if we're gonna get through everybody today. So Megan, you're out. I'm talking too much. I need to shut up.
Okay, can I do number 19?
Number 19? No, you can't. I'm joking. Go for it.
Like, oh dang, that's the only one I really knew. The unwelcome, touching, request for sexual favors and other verbal or physical harassment of a sexual nature from a superior, coworker, client, or customer is known as sexual harassment? A.
Okay. I don't know how you would get this question wrong, but nevertheless, okay. And again, this is because one of the why are we talking about this from an ethical perspective? One of the responsibilities of an employer is to create a safe working environment. And I appreciated several of the comments that were saying the first sexual discrimination and harassment law showed up in like the 1960s, and people said, what took so long? Because, again, this gets back to the fact that we passed laws that we have to establish legal minimums. The expectation was, what should we be able to rely on? Not a legal minimum, but an ethical minimum. People are supposed to behave in a genteel place, right? And what we were seeing is that was not the case, especially as we started to increase the presence of multi-gender, multi-race in the workplace. That same level of ethical behavior was not being reflected in behavior. And we had to therefore create legal minimums because we could not enforce the ethical minimums, right? When we look at the Ford plant, where the lady said, you know, going through this, I would never say it, I would just keep my damn mouth shut, right? And you're sitting there going, how? How do people keep these jobs? How do people act this way and not get their butt fired? And I honestly don't have an answer for that.
I think they should have just fired all the managers.
That's what I think.
Well, one thing I will say, having had a little bit of management experience, the actual process of firing somebody, at least in a public institution, is incredibly complex and difficult and time consuming.
Easier in a red Ford state, right?
Well, no, not for not a federal or a state employee.
Right.
Now, if I'm working in a private industry, it's much easier. Okay, which can be both good and bad, right? It's unfortunate that when we find people who are not doing their jobs very well, it's great if we can get rid of that person. But at the same time, there are protections that can help to prevent people from, for example, we had a story here at the university that the guy that was running the museum was sexually harassing his coworker. She reported it, and the person she reported it to was a good friend of the museum, and basically retaliated against the woman who had complained about the guy, right? And caused massive problems. And we're going, this is at a university. This is one of those places where if you would think that people, because of their education, would be more likely to act in an ethical manner because they've been exposed to these concepts, this is the place you would expect it to happen, and this is exactly where it didn't happen. Okay? I remember then going to and I'm not going to say where I went. This was about 12 years ago. I went to, and it's sad to say, but I'm going to say it. I went to a college of technology program. I went to their location. I was going to help an instructor. And I went to get on the computer, and the wallpaper for the computer was a half-dressed woman. And I remember looking at the instructor going, what the hell is this? Oh, well, you know, guys will be guys. And I'm going, no, that does not fly. No. Well, I'll get on them for it. I'm going, it's not them that I'm having a problem with. It's the fact that you as the instructor knew that it was there. Well, what do you expect? I expect a whole hell of a lot more. But this kind of stuff happens. All right, sorry. Again, I'm getting off. I need to shut up. Haley, you're up.
So I'm going to do number 2.
Okay.
The economic concept of a fair wage is critical to the nation as a whole in an economic system like capitalism, in which individuals pay for most of what they need in life rather than receiving government benefits funded by taxes. And this is pretty much to help the lower class and the middle class earn sufficient wages so that they can help support the economic stability. Yeah.
Yeah, the challenge of capitalism, if we were to operate capitalism as it is intended, complete, unfettered, open, free market capitalism, literally, who decides who wins and loses? The market itself, with no interference, right? And what we're saying here is that if capitalism was operated that way, we would have winners and losers, but they would decide that themselves. But because we don't have complete open market capitalism, we have to put in implementations because we recognize the potential for abuse of the system, which results, for example, in a fair wage. Because we realize that people have to earn money in order to care for their basic needs. I have to pay for food, I have to pay for water, I have to be able to have enough money to be able to get those things. Okay, because if I don't, I am literally condemning people to die, right? So a classic example of this, Texas, massive storm, widespread power outages. Certain areas, the electricity stayed on and a guy received a bill for $16,720. That was his electrical bill. Because his electricity stayed on and the demand was so high, it was so difficult to produce electricity, and because they're running on a closed system, Texas provides its own power. It does not receive power from any other grid in the country. Therefore, that market can charge what they want to for electricity. So this guy gets charged $16,000. Why is that a problem? That's a lot of money, but it's for a good that this person cannot survive without. We are hearing about people that have died in Texas because of how cold it was when there was no power. So it's not one of those things where a person can decide, you know what, I don't need that. This is not a discretionary service. Okay? All right. Okay, Porter, you're up.
So I'm going to do number 3, which laws give workers the option of not joining the union, even at companies where the majority is voted to be represented by a union. And that is right to work laws.
Okay. Fortunately, we don't have time to discuss this because I've discussed too much, so I'm going to just keep moving on.
Oh, shoot.
Okay, Kyle, you're up. Kyle going once? Kyle going twice? Okay, Scott, you're up. Scott going once? Scott going twice? Tanner.
All right, yep, I'm here. I would like to do number 32. True or false, all 50 states in the United States have right to work laws. And I believe that's false. Only about half of them are right to work states.
Okay. All right. Anthony, you're up.
Can I actually go last now? Number 3 was my main, but my other ones were taken.
Okay, so I'll give you 3 more people and then we're going to come back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Tell, you're up. Number 5.
Yeah, we did it.
Oh, we did, I'm sorry.
Yep. We haven't done number 4.
How about number 9?
Number 9.
The negotiation process aimed at getting managers agreement to a fair employment contract for members of the union is called collective bargaining.
Okay, collective bargaining. Good. Okay, Sam, you're up.
Yeah, I picked the really long one.
Okay.
43.
Number 43. Okay.
That's the pros and cons of a labor union. That a pro is that there's a collective voice for the company, and the pros that there's an outside party to contact. You like the workplace is not safe. It also increases pay, so on and so forth. Or you have an advocate to increase your pay. Downsides are unions are inflexible and they cause the company to go under. They also take dues, and it can make a company not want to start up in that area.
Okay. Again, this is one where that was a totally correct answer, and I'd love to jump in on that one, but we're going to have to move on. All right, Kason, you're up.
Is 17 available?
Number 17, let's see. Yes, it is.
I think that is D, co-determination.
Okay. Again, I'd love to jump into that one, but I'm going to skip it. Anthony, are you ready?
Well, I was kind of looking at number 14.
Okay.
But I am not 100% sure if this is the correct answer. So the United States has shifted from the answer that I believe was correct was A, from a service economy to a manufacturing economy over the past 3 decades, which makes sense to me because we do manufacture so much when in the very beginning, a lot of what we were doing was services, but it also kind of doesn't make sense to me because we do a lot of services still.
Okay, I'd actually argue the answer is D. We shifted from one where we primarily produced material to one where we're now manipulating material that's been produced in other places. So we've shifted. Okay, go.
In World War II, it's 1 or 2, where the car manufacturing companies were started making like military vehicles, and so that would be more of manufacturing because we started in like doing steel and all that stuff, but now instead we're, like you were saying, we're using other people's
materials, things like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you do not have a lot of people that are going into, I'm going to work at a factory where I'm going to stand on a line and now does that exist? Absolutely. But that is not the primary form of employment. The primary form of employment in the United States now has moved to a service industry where we're providing goods and services and redistributing or assisting people with the materials they have. We've sent the manufacturing to other places. Now, what's the benefit or strength of having an economy that has an emphasis on manufacturing? Why would that, because we continually, especially from politicians, we hear this real emphasis on, I'm gonna bring manufacturing jobs back.
I don't want to be a downer, but one benefit is pre-war. When you have manufacturing, you have all the material and everything to be ready for a war.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I see that there's some self-sufficiency argument there. There's more jobs for people, and because I'm normally I'm sending those produced goods someplace else to sell, I'm making money 2 ways. First of all, I'm making money by making the product, and then I'm making money by selling it. So I'm kind of increasing the value of my economy. If I'm simply selling those products to other people, I'm not making that money the same way. But it also means that I can have more specialized labor. I can have higher, what's the word? Manufacturing can be a very high skill type activity, but not across the board. This allows for a higher level. If I move into a service industry economy, I can have much more training and I can be much more specialized in what I do. Okay, one of the things that a service economy allows us to do is to be kept, rather than a service economy, it's an information economy, where I can be more high tech and not have to be so focused on production. Also, manufacturing inherently results in pollution. The creation of goods is going to create pollution. If I get rid of those jobs, what's going to happen to the environment? Eventually, it's going to improve. At least because of manufacturing. One of the problems is if I'm not manufacturing, I tend to become a consumer economy, which shifts pollution from the production of goods to the consumption of the goods. So it's kind of a tricky thing, but this is all part of the conversation, right?
We need better technology so that industry can come back.
Well, but the question is, do we want it to come back, or do we want to create new and even more productive and valuable economies to replace it, rather than just doing what we've always done? So for example, oil and gas, right? Incredibly valuable, incredibly lucrative economies. Has a direct impact on the environment. One of the arguments that we hear more and more often is creating a green economy, which is I'm going to have the same number of jobs, but instead of doing the same old thing that we've done, I'm going to try to put that same effort into more environmentally friendly energy sources that can be just as valuable to the country, but less harmful to the environment. So instead of making the argument, we just need to go deeper into oil and gas, that's, for example, you guys are going into nuclear. Why? Because the base rate and the energy, relatively speaking, is much, much cleaner, right? And much longer term than gas and oil. And you don't have to go to places to get the gas and oil that are either politically sensitive in some locations or environmentally harmful in others.
And batteries are getting so much better. We're starting megawatts. And now use electric engines versus gas engines. So,
Right.
we're able to create cars that can feasibly, if I can create the energy for them in a responsible way, I now have cars that can drive at reasonable speeds.
oh yeah.
I now have trucks that can transport goods at reasonable levels, right? Imagine when we can start having truly electric trains, which are incredibly economical in terms of the transportation that they can carry, right? For very long distances and for very low cost. That's what we're talking about. Okay, did we get everybody? Nuclear trains. Okay, so last thing, just really quickly then, because everyone's about to take off. I still haven't gotten a new number generator yet. I apologize.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
which number will I be on this one?
I think that you will be whatever number comes up first on the number generator. Look, it's 13.
Yes.
Okay, 13, geez,
Wow.
12 and 19. So the earlier folks got totally hosed today.
Dang it.
Okay, so let me see what that really was. So you went right before Zach. Zach was, let's see, where are we? Right here.
Down one more. Oh, wait, just kidding.
Oh, I gotta take that back, Caden. You would have been number 8.
Scott wasn't here. I could take number 13.
That's true. I'm good with that. So Kyle gets it. Scott wasn't here, so Caden gets it, and then
Kyle wasn't here either.
oh, that's right.
I'll
So
take his too.
I think I'll give it to Porter this time.
Ah.
You were number 1. It wasn't gonna happen. It wasn't gonna happen. Okay, so Porter Caden and Kaysen, I think, because 19.
Well, technically, Anthony went last, right? So maybe he should get it.
You know, I'm good with that too.
Hey, wait, but I don't want to steal his point. That's kind of unethical.
No, I
You guys
mean,
are
you just
gonna
went
fight
in
over it.
the
I'll
order.
just take it.
Wait, Haley's willing to should be the tiebreaker. Okay, everyone, have a great day. I'll see you all on Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert.
Thank you.